Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Really nice to meet you. And would you like to introduce yourself with a few sentences to whoever is watching us?
Okay, so my name is Melanie Hodge, and I am a reverse glass painter, and I've been a member of ABNA since 2016, I think.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think it will be really, really interesting to understand a little bit more about the technique that you use to create your paintings because
Hmm.
it's something very, very interesting, something I haven't encountered before. So it will be interesting for our listeners to learn more about it.
So I paint on glass. I paint on 4 mil window glass, so it's as thick as what you'd have in a normal single glazed window. If I'm working bigger, then I work on safety glass, but it's both fragile in that I don't want to drop it,
Yeah, I can imagine.
and I can scratch it if I'm not careful. Um, but it's also a bit hardier than you think. So when I first started working on glass, um, I had two small children, and I sort of thought doing something on glass was kind of crazy, and doing it in oils, which are very long, take a very long time to dry,
They do.
very slow drying. I'm like, that's kind of an issue. Um, but then I started working on it, and as long as I have someplace to put it away, so as long as I have a door between the children
Yeah.
and the cat and the wet paint that I can close, actually, it really suits how I prefer to work.
Perfect. Yeah, I think it's very important to be comfortable with the medium that you're using because it's been the same for me. Like the moment I found my medium, I was like, that's it. That's the way I want to create. This is the closest to the way I want to express myself. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. And with the glass that you're using, do you have to have it cut to shape, or do you do that yourself?
So I've learned that it's best for me not to try to master every trade.
Very smart.
So I have practiced cutting glass, and I've practiced doing a little bit of stained glass so that you're actually shaping it in different ways. Um, but that is not my main skill, and it's dangerous for me to try to do the things that other people do so much better. So I have in Croatia, where I started painting, it was easy because you could go into any framing shop, any glass window shop, and they knew what the tradition was, and they knew how you wanted your glass to be prepared.
Oh wow.
And so you would just say, I just need so much glass of such and such a size, and I'd go and I'd pick it up, and it would be perfect.
Amazing.
Um, and here in England, I've had to experiment, and what I've found is the most brilliant is there is local to me a stained glass workshop, and so they do specialist restoration and craft supply and creation of new work, and they're used to cutting small panes of glass, and they can cut exact, and then they can hand finish it, hand sand it, so I don't end up cutting myself. And I get it all nicely wrapped in newspaper, and it's brilliant. But I did try some industrial options first, and that did not work.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's all a little bit of experimenting, isn't it? Yeah, I like sometimes just trying out new things to see what's going to work best. I was thinking as well, do you have a particular piece, a painting that you've done that has quite a quirky, interesting story that you would like to share for our listeners?
Well, I can show you something that's really quite small because it's easy to move,
Lovely.
and I'll have to move the camera.
Yeah, that would be great.
So this one,
Hmm. Oh,
uh,
wow.
this is one of the first pieces I did.
I love
It was
it.
probably the second or third piece at this size. I did a couple, and they were totally opaque, so they had a background painted on them. Um, and when I was working on this one, this was done at the stage where I was still doing. I was sort of going to an established naive artist,
Yeah.
and he was sort of teaching me. He would sort of give me instructions on how to mix the paint and how to put them on the glass, and he would show me, and then I would copy.
Brilliant.
And I took this to him because it was still in the stages where I was talking to him about what I was doing. And I wanted to get the eyes, but I didn't want to make them go dark. So I didn't know what to do with the background. And this was the piece that he said, you're asking me questions I don't know. And basically at that point he said, you're done. You're a colleague. You're an equal. Go figure it out and let me know what you find out.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
So what I did is I wanted the eyes to be quite bright.
They have that glitter to them.
So that's paint on the front, and then what I've done to give texture to the back of the eye, the iris, is I painted the back in white.
Oh, wow.
And what I discovered on this was that if I back something, so if I paint this and then I put like an indigo background on it,
yeah,
it dulls everything down.
All right. Yeah.
The light hits the oil, and it's semi-transparent, but it's not meant to be seen as transparent. But what it does kill the reflection.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so by painting behind it in a bit of white, I was able to lift it. And then I didn't know what to do with the background. And then I noticed, because I was showing my husband, and I held it up to a wall, and I went, I don't know what to do. Should I leave it plain? Should I do black? Do I do blue? And what we discovered, let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find. Oh, that's perfect. What I found, you get shadows.
Oh, yeah, you got the reflections. That's so nice.
And if you put the light really close to it, you get a really strong shadow.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
That was fabulous, because suddenly it went from being a one-dimensional piece of work to being three-dimensional. So I've done a couple of pieces like that. I've done them where they're transparent and you can hang them on the wall. Or you can put them in a frame with a solid background, so like a white background, and then you would see that. So
I really like that.
It's an early piece, but it sort of shaped a lot of what I do now, because I just thought it was so interesting.
It is. It's fascinating. And I suppose it's also fascinating for the person who's going to have that in their home, because they can make it their own by the positioning of it in their house, which is amazing.
Yeah, and how you light it and whether you do something else with it. So that's, and it's a really good demonstration piece because it's small.
Wonderful.
So I tend to take that round with me when I do demonstrations because it's something you can hold.
Wonderful, that's great, thank you. And in terms of the inspiration, where do you draw inspiration from? Like, for instance, I noticed that you have a lot of kind of symbolic, kind of mythological objects in your paintings. Am I correct in thinking that?
I think they sort of become that. So a lot of them start as a really playful idea. So I've got some brown bears. I've got a whole series of bear paintings that I did. And those were all based on the fact that in Zagreb, the mountain range behind the city is the Medvednica mountain range. Mm-hmm. And Medved is the word for bear.
Oh, wow.
And these lovely rounded mountains. And I just thought it'd be lovely to have bear mountains.
That's great. And
so I sketched it. And I took the sketch to Ivica, who had been mentoring me. This was after he'd said, I'm not teaching you anymore. Come and just come and have lemonade and it'll be lovely.
Yeah.
So I took him the sketch and I said, this is what I'm working on. It's really big. It's the biggest piece I've done. And he just sat there scratching his head and asking me in Croatian why there were all these bears. And I was like, I thought this was really kitsch. I thought it was really twee. It was really obvious. And I'm like, he'd never put the two together because there's a slight accent change in Medved and Medvednica. And so he never thought of them as the Bear Mountains. And at the time, I was also friends with a photographer, and she wanted a very small bear painting. Mm-hmm. And so I said to her, well, there's this fortress up on the hill, and I put this in a number of paintings, but I sort of think I need to have bear kings and queens to go with the castle. I said, but, it's your painting, so if you don't want it, I won't do it. And she said to me, she goes, oh, you have to, because they had a view of this fortress from their living room, And she, every night, would sit with her 2 children and they would tell stories of the bear kings and queens who lived in the castle on the hill.
So
So
sweet.
then all of my bears started having, I'm like, well, that's perfect. It has to have crowns. So it's not like I intended for them to be hugely symbolic.
Yeah.
But now when I look at them, they feel more than what they are. And I think that happens with a lot of the things that go into my painting. I sort of, one painting was supposed to have an elephant, and when I put the elephant in the background, it didn't really work. So I put a sailboat in, and suddenly the painting totally changed,
Oh wow.
and it worked. And I'm like, okay. And now I look at it, and when people see it, they say things, you know, that they tell me all kinds of stories that come to their mind. But for me, it was like, it was an image that worked. It's only after it's finished and it's been hanging on the wall for a while that I then start to psychoanalyze it and go, oh, that's really interesting.
That's great. It's almost like the painting is having its own life, and then a lot of other lives emerge from it once other people see it through their own eyes, through their own experience, which is amazing.
It is. I think that's probably true with a lot of artwork. But because I come to it very much, quite often from a playful place, I don't have deep, meaningful stories that have to go with them. And so it is quite lovely that people can just respond to them as a bit of whimsy if they want.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time this evening, and hopefully we'll speak